There we are, and see if I can make sure that, oh yeah, the waiting room is just moving along. Our first FRC mentor session for the 2022 season. We have planned to have mentor sessions by demand and where seen as desirable. So we're starting out our program of Monday night sessions with a mentor session this evening at 7. It will be followed by a coding session at 8 o'clock this evening. We're going to review the coding that we developed together in October, November, and December, and look forward to our more specialized FRC related coding in the next 6 weeks thereafter. So with that, let us just take a look at our very simple agenda. If there are any suggestions for topics that we should discuss, most welcome. In short, we'd like to just take a look at the Rapid React game from the perspective of the participants here and have some discussion about the game, its challenge, and what are some of the details of the game worthy of consideration as your team discusses its approach to building its robot. Also, strategies for the build season. This build season is like none other, as we all know. The unprecedented wave of restrictions and regulations may make it challenging for some teams. And perhaps there are ways that we can brainstorm together to get things done. And if anyone has any ideas about that, and then opening it up for some general questions. So this session is for the community to come together, have some discussion. And it's kind of like the session we may have had at the kickoff, where for several years here in London, right after the game reveal, we went into various rooms and had strategy discussions based on the revealed game manual. And since we didn't get an opportunity to do that in person this year, this forum here is a good place to start that. And I'm sure many teams have already undergone such a discussion, but having the discussion in the wider community may help us to appreciate opportunities that are in this season's game. So with that, what we could do is sort of open it up to any questions that we may have among the participants here, or suggestions or observations. It's kind of an open session where we can take a look at the strategy. I have invited a particular FRC mentor from London here. His name is Thomas, and many of you know Thomas from Team 3739. And I always remember Thomas was part of these strategy sessions in London here. And so I thought I'd invite him along, as he has some very seasoned experience with interpreting game rules and identifying areas of focus and opportunity. So with that in mind, thank you very much for everyone who's here in this evening's call. And we can open it up to questions, suggestions, and the like. And I see the chat has 7 sort of messages so far. Oh yes, hello, hello. And there we are. Okay, so we don't have any questions or suggestions yet. Wow, we're still getting lots of new participants filing in. The one of the sort of questions that face, or a new mentor may face, or that any mentor may face, or team, the strategy for the team in terms of building the robot. Which aspects of the game will you focus on, and why? Oh, there's an interesting question. How many teams have picked up their kits of part at this point? We had almost half of the teams in the province picked up their kits of parts on Sunday. And, or sorry, on Saturday. And by the 18th, we have another 46 teams. I think it's about 90 teams we expect by the 18th. So we had a very good turnout. Based on all the conditions that are prevailing, we did get 46 teams picking up on Saturday. So that's a really great encouragement. And there are many others who are just working out things with their schools. And we're really hopeful that as things develop, we will find our way through to the FRC season and get our robots on the field. So that was a good question. Coding skills. Oh, so that's good. As it was mentioned here, coding expertise was lost to the team. This has happened on many teams. And the next session, starting at 8 o'clock, we will discuss coding. We'll review the coding that we did in October through to December, and have an opportunity for participants to ask questions, and we'll give you links to the previously generated materials from the last set of sessions. Okay, so there's some interesting discussion coming out here about how to design your robot. There's discussion about using Fusion 360 versus Onshape and 3D printing and things like this. And the question was, are we on the right track with this? So I suppose that may depend on the preferences of each team and the conditions that prevail on each team. So for example, my previous team has used multiple CAD. We used SolidWorks and we used, what was that one called before? There was another one a few years ago. We were just starting to use Onshape. And then we also used FreeCAD at various times in our team's history. So I think we have been successful with each of the CAD programs within our team's sort of capabilities. And there are various arguments for using this or that CAD program. The Onshape program is very interesting. For those who may not have used it, it does allow simultaneous editing of a CAD model. And that probably would take some practice, but you can imagine several members of your team designing a modular sort of approach to the 3D space on your robot and sort of mapping out in 3D in real time where various game components or robot components may fit to approach the solution to various elements of the game. So that's well worth trying. We don't have any Onshape sessions planned at the moment, but that is a possibility. If there's a demand, we can look into that. And there is a lot of Onshape material on the Onshape website, and maybe we can generate a little bit more FRC directly related Onshape material. So there's a nice comment from Thomas S. Thank you. Onshape and Fusion 360, a great combination. And yeah, the SolidWorks and MasterCAD, yeah, SolidWorks is quite a system. It's very, very high ceiling kind of thing, as it is involved in everything up to military hardware design. Whereas Onshape is great for online collaboration and other things. I've never personally used the Fusion 360, but according to this comment, it's great. So, good discussion going on here. To access the first tech challenge. That's something I can ask about. I'm not directly sort of tapped into the FTC educational resources aside from the simulator. I've used that one, but I definitely could ask that to my team tomorrow as we meet every Tuesday. And I'd be very glad to sort of point in the direction of the FTC resources. And that is an interesting approach, as we see here in the commentary, using FTC as a segue to FRC when you're planning in your school, as that helps to develop skills. The grade 7 to 9s, for example, can start their FRC learning on FTC robots in grade 7 to 9 and maybe make a transition. That's what's done in several places. So, field CAD available yet? I will also ask that. Let me just jot that down. Good, so I'm just taking some notes here so that we can respond. Hopefully in the information, oh, there we are. We have the playing field CAD link that has been shared there. Good, so a lot of interesting sort of commentary going on here. Maybe one thing that I will do here, I'm just going to sort of go back to this this board right here.
Sir, what must we click when we hit the link? Because I'm on the website page, but I do not know what to click.
So the playing field here, and videos, computer-aided design, SolidWorks. Is this the one?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure what I should press because I'm not sure. It's my first time.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's these links here. There are 3 major field assemblies in their complex forms and their simple forms with file sizes there. So you probably would want to go there. That's my guess. I haven't tried that yet, but. So we've had lots of discussions so far about various resources and approaches to using CAD. There's a nice comment here about teaching robotics courses, grade 9 tech design and grade 11 manufacturing, and their FTC education kits and a Romy. The Romy robot is an interesting sort of idea, as the Romy involves the same programming paradigm as used in the FRC robots. And yet the Romy you can take home in a backpack. So it is possible that you could have 1 or 2 Romys at a school and let certain students take them home over the weekend or in the evenings and try out their programming skills on the Romy, only to build up capabilities that are later applied on the full-size FRC robots. So that's a great idea there. So I think it seems that the group went straight into the questions, and that's great. So we've had a lot of questions sort of answered. It may be that you have already had a chance to look over your game strategy and look at some of the robot in 3 days videos that have started to show up on the internet. So maybe that's not a need of the community. Maybe there are some questions or suggestions regarding how to support each other during the build season, getting access to your robot, being able to build despite restrictions while being safe, and things like this. So if any of the community members would like to discuss or suggest or offer insights about these topics or others, please feel most welcome. So getting started with intra-team collaboration. It would be interesting to explore that. What are some of the barriers to intra-team collaboration? Is it getting the contact information, the timing, or just effective collaboration online? Maybe it would be nice to explore that particular challenge. Good. We have about 3 or 4 questions coming up now, so that's good. So I'm just taking a look at one moment here at the getting started with intra-team collaboration remotely. For me last year, our intra-team collaboration was on 3 continents. Our design team, or graphic design and video editing team was in Nigeria. Our computer programming team was in China, and our build team and testing team and drive team were all in Canada here. And we had regularly planned Zoom meetings at a mutually desirable time. And then we also used project management sort of techniques and had lists of tasks that needed to be done. And we used online spreadsheets and storyboards, as is done in project management, to keep track of what we did and what we were doing and what still needed to be done, and adjust that regularly. So that was our approach for starting the remote collaboration. But I'm not sure if that answers the question of the challenge of getting started remotely with intra-team collaboration. Just going down through here. And here's a little discussion about that. There's another question here. Everyone is online. How can we build and design and make a team together? So that's very similar to the other question there. So I'm just wondering about that, if anyone has any suggestions about that, collaborating online. Well, here's a nice comment. It seems that Onshape is a part of that solution for at least one team. 4946 is using Onshape to collaborate remotely around design. And I was really excited about the prospect of doing that in Onshape, and we elected to go with the coding. But I would have loved to have sessions like these about Onshape because of that capability of Onshape. So there's a great piece of the puzzle for online collaboration. I especially think that the Onshape is great because I imagine several modules and designing the robot modularly. In my class, at least, allowed multiple groups to execute in parallel in building the modules, and then keep in mind the 3-dimensional territory taken up by their respective modules. And the Onshape can establish that 3D territory by allowing everyone to understand the drawing simultaneously. We can do brainstorming and refining in real time on a Zoom call mixed with an Onshape document that is active and live with multiple simultaneous editors. So MS project, too much for FRC projects. That's an interesting thing. I've never used MS project. We've always, in my classes, we simply use spreadsheets that were online Google Docs, and they were very effective. A spreadsheet can very effectively make a burn down chart. And we had charts where we had the students' names assigned to each of the tasks, and we checked them off when they were done, and it really was effective for us. MS project, I'm not sure if anyone has some insight about that. I don't. Well, anyway, I don't have the experience with it, and I don't think I would have gone with it because the simplicity of the spreadsheets helped my classes to keep going. And that was with FRC and in my computer science and computer engineering classes. There we are. There's another one, Google Sheets. Yeah, the Google Sheets is very simple to use for everyone. It's universally available. There's no license required. That's why I strongly gravitate towards open sort of technologies. You can just get going with Google Sheets. Everyone sees the changes immediately, and it's great to put up on a Zoom call on a shared screen, and we can have a virtual stand-up meeting on a regular basis, say once a day or once a week, whenever our sort of rhythm sort of falls, and update in real time for everyone on the same sheet, the data and the developments as they appear in the project. So very simple to use and very effective. And an interesting thing about Gantt charts, as far as I've seen, a Gantt chart is a very linear sort of process, and it was developed by the US military. And my team, we tried that approach in earlier years, but we gravitated towards more of a Scrum, lean, agile approach in recent years, because it allowed us to simultaneously execute key robot build tasks with interdisciplinary teams in class and after school. And I'm not sure if Gantt charts enable that kind of thing. As far as I remember, I've seen them as much of a waterfall kind of approach, where there's one thing after another. And if the first thing is off, then by the end of the project, it's too late to fix. But I'm not sure, maybe there is a way to use a Gantt chart like
Well,
that.
William,
Yeah.
I'm just going to jut in with my
Sure.
personal experience with that regard. I've been using Gantt charts for about 3 years with Okobotics and 80/20. And what we found success with is having each sub-team under a different color in a single Gantt chart. So you can see which team is supposed to handle which item.
Nice.
And you can therefore overlay each sub-team's Gantt chart into one sort of season-long Gantt. And not everything starts in a linear pattern, because you've got so many sub-teams working over top of each other. But it means that all the mentors are clear on what needs to get done by when, even though there's multiple different sub-teams collaborating together, or they don't share any students at all and they aren't communicating. This means that at least somebody along the way is checking the start and end dates for different things. Even if it's not your sub-team, you know what needs to get done.
So actually,
so it's a good second place to the Scrum team.
I think that brings out something that, yeah, I've just not used the Gantt chart, and that does sound right. What I was thinking of, I thought Gantt charts were also used in sort of waterfall type projects, and things do need to happen in a certain order. That is true. And yet, if we try to do everything in a linear fashion, we may run out of time. But if you can break your project into modules, it may be more manageable to do that. And the Gantt chart would be great because, as described by Thomas here, we've got various deadlines for things to happen. And as that was described, it sounds very good. So maybe we can share a few examples of such charts in our community here. Now we have another comment. Trello for project management, and mentioning with Trello, I'm on several groups that use Miro, which I understand to be something similar. It's an online whiteboard system, if I'm correct, the Trello, and you can have multiple people see in real time a virtual whiteboard that can be used in a similar way as described for the spreadsheets. It sounds like you could also use that for a Gantt chart.
Yeah, William. Yeah. Trello's not like Miro. I use Miro as well. No, Trello is a project management tool, but basically it's organized in columns and cards. So you have specific cards that you work on, which are specific tasks, and the columns become basically the stages in your project. So like you're working on it, or it's going to, or it's done, and you kind of move the cards through the different columns.
Nice.
So you basically have a real-time view of where your project is.
That's excellent. I think that's maybe why I had thought it was similar, as someone on our Miro team was discussing Trello and the cards, and we ended up implementing cards on our Miro team. So maybe that's why I had thought that. And that sounds very good. As described there, the Trello would be excellent for an agile or lean kind of thing, or maybe even Kanban. There's different project management frameworks out there, and many are effective for different organizations and teams, depending on their culture and preferences and experience. So there's a recommendation there for Trello rather. So lots of commentary coming through here. And there's a team here. Peter is mentioning the use of Onshape, not to the level of collaboration in real time, but just the development of capability through the video lessons to design simple objects. Project 2021. I'm wondering if Peter might describe Project 2021.
Is that just Microsoft Project 2021? Or is there something called Project 2021?
So Microsoft Project 2021.
Okay.
I haven't installed it yet. I'm told that based on the kind of descriptions that are, there's an element of collaboration there.
So it seems that Project 2021 may be part of the Microsoft suite, and something that would likely then integrate with Microsoft Teams, which is used by many schools. So that might be something.
I think that's a high probability of that being integrated. It's not part of the Office suite. It's an add-on. So
it's an add-on. Okay. So something for teams to consider there.
I've also heard something about a tool called Monday that's web-based. I've seen it in Chief Alpha. I've also seen it.
Oh, is it called Monday?
Kit of Parts? Yeah, Monday.
Oh yeah, Monday.com. It's an online collaboration tool as well. I've seen advertisements for it. I've never used that. So maybe that can be tried through the Kit of Parts, as was just mentioned there. I guess it's a voucher in the Kit of Parts then.
Our problem is that we're not entitled to use any of that because we're not competing with it. So we'll have to go with.
Whoa, I'm having a little trouble hearing that. The volume level seems to be a little low.
Yeah, I was just saying that with regards to accessing some of the virtual coupons and so on, because we're not competing this year, we won't actually have access to those resources.
Oh yes, that is a very interesting point. Unless your team is competing, it will be hard to get access to the coupons. So in some cases, you can get a educational or student license outside of FIRST, but it depends on which package it is. But others, you may need to be part of the FIRST ecosystem to access it. So something to consider anyway. You may want to check your preferred package on the website and see if there's a free trial or another offer on the website that will at least give you a temporary access to what you would get in the FIRST coupon. So yeah, there's some nice commentary about the Onshape here. The simultaneous manipulation of files on any device is really a very desirable attribute of a CAD system, especially in the case where you're having collaborative student teams design and implement a robot. So really looking forward to seeing how teams use Onshape in their design. Comment here. Number of comments. First of all, Office 365 is being used in a manner much like a Google Docs and Sheets example. And sub-teams can operate in MS Project. Oh yeah, all the mentors is a nice phrase. For me, that is a little humorous as well, as we are rather short on mentors in numerous years on our team. But there are other teams that really does make sense to have 10, 12, 15 mentors. So
you only need 3.
3.
I've managed with fewer, but you only really need 3.
Yes, you just have to be prepared to stop on a dime and do what's needed right then.
Yeah, not a whole lot of project planning software for a one-man band if you're a mentor.
But there's...
So I think we've gone over a lot of different project management software. Was there anyone who had any questions about the any game rules, I can go over real briefly.
That
I've
would be
read
great.
excerpts of the manual. And if you want to go over anything about prototyping, I've got a decent amount of prototyping hardware with me in this call. I can talk about intake wheels or climbers if you want to. So just send on in your questions onto chat. I'm figuring that's the next segment.
Perfect.
William?
Yeah, that'll be great. There's an interesting question that just came up here. Recommended goal for decent auto. Is it reasonable to expect teams to score 2 cargo during auto? And
Not in week one.
Not in week
If you are
one.
going to an early competition, I would recommend planning as if everybody's still figuring things out. By the time you compete in a week 6, most teams have had a chance to play one other event. Some teams are playing 3 or 4 in this district. So you're going to end up with a lot more complex autos. And you can, since there's no bag and tag, you can continue working on that code up until your competition. If you're doing an early event, I'd say a recommended goal for a decent auto, 100% move off that line in auto and collect your, I think it's called taxiing points. Just as long as you move off that auto line every single time in your week 1, you're going to have a point advantage against your enemy alliance. As for getting the 2 balls in every time, that would be a fantastic goal to have for a week 1 competition. Anything beyond that, you may want to look at some sort of tracking or PWM control to move your robot towards the balls on the field or closer towards the human player station so that at the end of autonomous, you can immediately pick up a ball and start scoring again. So sort of a 2.5 ball auto would be probably an alliance captain number 8 at a small week 1, week 2 competition. So that would be a great goal for auto. Yeah, so we basically feel like a born again or pre-rookie team this year. We do want to build prototypes for climbers and shooters and intakes. That's great. If you've got the parts, prototyping can be a fast way to determine whether something is a decent idea or not. If you don't have the inventory or you don't have the student knowledge to assemble, looking at RI3D to see what they test could be a great tool. Again, I want to stress, maybe don't choose 100% of the choices they make. Obviously, you want your robot to stand out at the competition, and a bunch of every bots makes competition a little bit difficult. But yeah, prototyping would be fantastic. If you want some advice, there are, I believe Kettering University posted a couple of videos in the past day or two, as well as the University of Minnesota Robotics. Those are 2 YouTube channels that are doing Robot in 3 days this weekend. Each of them have done wheel tests to see what works with the 2022 cargo. Basically, every wheel that's publicly available for FRC works with these balls. They're kind of like a tennis material, a tennis ball. So what I've got here is Thrifty bought 2-inch vectored intake wheels. I believe my green screen's partially blocking me out. But this works perfectly fine. I wouldn't recommend it for the outermost set of wheels if you're doing a 2-axle intake, just because they don't grab it as well as maybe something like an 80A Durometer Coulson Performa wheel from Vex Pro. And just to go over it real quick, Durometer, they're color-coded on AndyMark and on Vex Pro, as well as Rev and Banebots, which are the main manufacturers of FRC wheels. If you're looking to pick this up, you're going to want a medium density durometer, so something that is blue if it's on AndyMark or Banebots, or something that is medium gray if you're buying from Rev or Vex. Not done these before. We have a little bit of success with West Coast Drive. That is fantastic. In a year like this, some West Coast Drive experience goes a long way, because that's basically what an upper mechanism is going to look like this year. It's like a West Coast Drive, only it has to move inside and outside of the frame perimeter to intake the ball. So Peter, hopefully that helps you a little bit with prototyping. Again, there's tons and tons of resources that are being uploaded in the next 24 hours on Robot in 3 Days, First Updates Now, and University of Minnesota. If we're talking about climb, I know that everybody saw the traverse bar and went, whoa, that's intimidating. There are some RA3D teams who are trying to tackle it in 72 hours. Do we pick a team? I don't have a team. All right. Well, welcome to First. I believe it's Asaj. Yeah, so generally, if you are from a high school, your high school either has a robotics team or knows where the local FRC team is. If you don't, then I think that's where William comes into play.
I just wanted to ask about the hangar. In the animated video, it looked like you're swinging Tarzan style from one rung to the next. That's not the expectation. I mean, if you have a robot that can reach the height of the 7'7" high beam, then you can go directly there.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing you, Peter. I think I caught all that question. The question was, can you go directly to the high or traverse bar, or do you have to start at the low or middle and then swing your way up? You can start at the low or middle rung, and then you have to find some way to move from the middle rung to one of the two higher rungs. So you're not allowed to touch the ground while you're contacting those third and fourth rungs, because that would break the height allowance in the rule book. I hope that answers your question, Peter.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
So thank you, Thomas, and everyone. We've had some great questions so far and some excellent suggestions about practical hardware that we may use to solve the problems, and strategic focus on one or other of the game tasks. I'm wondering if any teams have experience in supporting other teams or in collaborating together, as we are facing unprecedented situations in terms of the ability to get together to build or access facilities or the like. Are there any suggestions, observations, or questions about that aspect of our season? So we have a comment here. To learn about the full design to build with prototyping in mind. So that's really good. We will see if we can address that question one way or another. This is something that is demonstrated fairly nicely with the RI3D teams. I was just seeing some prototypes today of a ball shooter that's for this season. And they built it out of wood. And then they actually ended up sawing off pieces of the wood as they were aiming the ball to get an optimum sort of a trajectory for the ball. That's a very common thing you can do with wood fairly easily on a prototyped ball shooter. And we did that a lot on my team as well. We used to build things out of wood quickly and then build them out of metal or other materials later. As for additional mentors, there is a mentor network. I'm not sure how good it is in the Brantford area, but that's definitely a good comment, as we will keep that in mind as we're networking in our various meetings and see who we can come up with for mentors in the Brantford area. So, Thomas, you had some interesting comments about a team coming off the line consistently. And then say you were mentoring your team this year. Would you try to get your robot to be able to traverse, as you just described, and score in high goal and do that autonomously as well? Like how do you decide how much your team is going to attempt to do in your experience?
Well, there's one sort of anecdote that we've used in the past when there's 3 main objectives. This year, it's a little bit trickier because there's 2 really difficult objectives and then a couple of things you can do to increase the likelihood of gaining points through those methods. So let's say we had 3 goals or objectives. The anecdote would be each costs $50 for you to build a robot that can do that. Obviously, as we know, that is not the actual cost when it comes to materials. But let's say each thing is $50. You have $100 budget to spend on the entire robot, which means that you can only ever do 2 things really well. So the anecdote says you want to spend $50 and make sure that something works properly, then spending $33 on everything and nothing quite works right. So by taking that sort of idea and applying it to this game where there is 2 fairly difficult objectives and a couple of simpler versions of the same objective, you really want to devote all your resources into either one or the other, or be a decent low bot, as we refer to it. So if you want to devote a large portion of your resources into getting that traverse bar, which may be helpful in getting a ranking point, which, as you veterans know, is quite important when it comes to competitions, I would recommend going for a low goal or low cargo robot, as well as the traverse bar. So doing just a simple, it could even be from the human player station direct to scoring, followed by a traversal 4th bar score. If you wanted to get the high shots every single time, great. Devote a lot of resources. You're probably going to need something like a turret or a hooded shooter of some kind in order to get that to be accurate and fine-tuned. And while you're doing that, you're going to run out of time and resources to do the traversal bar. So I would recommend one of the first 2 rungs as a hang goal if you're choosing a high shooting robot. If you want to be a fast cycler, I would recommend being a low bot and a low climber so that you can continue to do cycles into the end game, and then maybe in the last 5 seconds, ram into the lowest bar possible and use a pneumatic or electromechanical device to then lift yourself up really, really quickly. So there's a couple of different sort of game metas we're going to be seeing. I would not be surprised if by week 6 we have a sub 5-second traversal climb. I've seen a couple of different mechanisms that may prove to be that quick, and some mechanisms that will take the full 30 seconds. So as we get into competition, we're going to see more and more examples of good robot design or good time management.
So that was really good. Prioritizing, that's always a challenge. So you said the 2 biggest challenges that you see are the traversal and the high shooting. Is that what you would say?
Yes.
And that kind of dovetails into a question that was in the chat here. What's the main challenge for a shooter compared to last year? how would you see it as challenging as compared to other shooting, or why is it particularly challenging to say do the high shooting?
Well, in 2020/2021, the goal was a vertical plane with a hole cut in it that you had to get the ball through, where it basically didn't matter how fast the ball was going. As long as it went through that area, it would bounce and it would stay in. Here, it's a lot closer to basketball, where you have to have a good arc or backspin to your ball as it goes in order for it to stay in the hoop and count, and not just fly over it. In 2020, you could put as much power as you wanted behind your shooter and run it at full force. And as long as it went in and hit the backboard, it was basically fine. I know when I was at competition at Durham, and I believe I competed at Georgian as well, there was hardly any that would get scored and then bounce out, because it was shaped in a way that it would sort of prevent it from doing so. Now, once it's in, it's hard to bounce back out. In this game, I'll admit. However, you need to make sure that it is a high arcing shot, and that requires a little bit more math. As anybody who's taken physics, you need to produce a backspin. You need to take into account if there's any other balls in the air going into the same goal. You don't want to bounce and hit something else and not score. So I wouldn't recommend having a dual shooter like in 2017. However, the math is actually really similar to the 2017 game with the fuel. So you might see teams reusing old code or reusing old devices that they then take apart, analyze, and rebuild with the 2022 ball in mind. So that's why I could see the high shot being a lot more difficult this year.
And oh, thank you, Thomas. And it's really interesting, as the next question was reading my mind. Ronil Chanchlani just asked, how important do you believe defense is this year? Because I did hear reference in the game manual to a safe spot and a not so safe zone. That's not the safe spot. So what are your comments about defense?
Sure. Another great question, Ronil. When it comes to defense, you sort of need to see a competition or two before the game meta is established, because sometimes the rules are interpreted by people differently until they get to a competition where there's a single judge or a single rules person looking it over at the competition level and going, oh, that's an illegal move. You can't do that. So until everybody gets to an event where it can be a lot more uniform, everyone's interpretation of how loose you can be with defense often comes down to the driver. I would say interpret the rules the strictest possible combination, and then work within those. And as you realize that certain rules can be bent, then you can bend them. When it comes to defense, there's no physical obstacles in your way from driving around the field, which I think means that all kinds of rookie teams or low resource teams are going to put their efforts into being a really fast and robust drivetrain for defense. Not to say that veteran teams won't attempt defense as well, it just might be a backup. You don't really need any specific hardware to be a defense team this year. I'd recommend having one side of your robot be at the maximum allowable height. The maximum allowable starting height, I should say. That way you can drive in front of somebody and possibly get in their way as they're trying to use vision to aim. Beyond that, there isn't a whole lot you can do once they dock. I'm not remembering the name. I think it's a launch pad. The vertical plane where you can shoot from is the launch pad. Once they touch that, you can't get in their way at all. You have to let them take the shot, and that's in the spirit of first. We want them to be able to take that shot. But as they're moving in what's known as a cycle, there's opportunities where they're not in a safe zone, where you can bump into them or stall them or make them go around you that would prevent them from scoring points throughout the match. So that's the way that I would probably play defense, is just slowing the cycles rather than finding a chokehold. I have also heard a mix of options, pros and cons to defense. I'd say plan to be an offense robot, and if you find out through gameplay that defense is the way to go, you should definitely go defense. If you find out that, oh, hey, this shooter that we tried to make actually works really well, stick with that. That's going to be your number one go-to plan. Planning on defense doesn't tend to work out well when it comes to alliances and elims. Looks like Gabriel has come up with a couple of good questions as well. So if you don't mind, William, I'll just go in and answer those real quick.
Go ahead.
What should be considered on the software side for the climber in endgame? Well, any locking mechanism needs to be activated before the timer runs out. I'll tell you that much. The points are counted 5 seconds after the timer and or when everything stops moving. So if you don't put a locking mechanism on your climber and the time runs out in the match, your robot becomes disabled and all electrical power to the climber gets cut. Which means that if you are still mid-climb or you are already climbed and don't have some sort of clutch or brake, your robot will just fall to the ground. So on the mechanical side, building in some sort of clutch brake. On the electrical controls, programming side, whatever you want to call it, making sure that that activates properly every single time guarantees you the points, rather than focusing on some super great climb that doesn't actually lock properly. I've seen teams pour resources into climbers that just don't end up working, and it's disheartening. Software, besides that, I can't really think of anything specific for the end game. I've seen teams choosing radial arms, in which case you need an encoder on those to accurately guess where the next bar is going to be. But that depends on the design the students come up with. As for what kind of mechanism or sensor needs to detect the cargo in the intake, you could use a non-contact switch located on the underside of wherever the ball is going to be stored inside your robot. That way you don't get a whole lot of false positives from the belly panel or the electrical system, presumably on the bottom of the robot. You could also choose a color sensor. I'd actually recommend the color sensor V3 from Rev Robotics, because that means you're able to determine whose alliance that ball refers to. If you're a red robot and you pick up a blue ball, that's not illegal, and it's not illegal to score it either. The downside is it scores for whatever team the ball corresponds to. So if you're a red alliance, you pick up a blue ball and score it, great, you've just scored against yourself. In previous games, it's all been the same colored ball, so we didn't really need to worry about that. So I'd recommend a color sensor V3 from Rev if you've got the budget for it. If you don't, programming an ultrasonic sensor to detect the ball inside the robot, and training your drivers to make sure that you don't pick up the wrong colored ball. Both good questions, Gabriel.
There was also a commentary about the software there. I think the software follows the hardware. So if you have a locking or brake mechanism that needs to be activated, then you need to have some kind of activator or actuator on your robot that has a corresponding entry in your computer software. And likewise, any device, sensor, or actuator in your robot needs to have the software to go with it. So it's kind of, we work backwards from the requirements of the robot. We list all the actuators and sensors required, and then we write the software to go with that. So hopefully that will answer that as well. Oh, there is a color sensor in the kit of parts. That's a nice indication here.
I know, right?
Good.
That's awesome. They don't always put in a color sensor, so that's nice.
And I think we got one 2 years ago, didn't we? I remember us using that.
I remember just about every year we get an ultrasonic. But yeah, the color sensor is a little more rare.
Yeah. So, oh no, there was some kind of color sensor. We were using it in class, and we got it from some kit of parts because I didn't buy it. It's interesting.
Yeah, I think Rev might have done that with the V1 or the V2 when it first came out.
That's it.
A lot of the brand new products get added to the kit of parts that we get to try them out as teams.
Excellent.
So that might have been a previous iteration.
Excellent. So that's good. Thank you very much to the members of the community, and especially to Thomas, who's come on as our special guest. Thomas is part of the team 3739, and I really wanted to mention this, that their team helped our team in many situations throughout the years, and we were able to offer some other things to their team, and we combined resources and went together to North Bay on one bus, and we found ways to do computer programming together and strategy and business sessions together as two teams. And so that's why I wanted to bring that out, in that we really helped each other. And I think this can happen on a wider scale throughout the community, that we may be able to find ways to support each other with gracious professionalism throughout our robotics community, and hope for and achieve the success of all the teams, because this is just an unparalleled learning opportunity for the participants in FIRST Robotics, students and mentors and everyone else involved alike. So there's the sort of sentiment I wish to share, and the appreciation for Thomas having joined us this evening. So all the best, Thomas, and to everyone else. So it's not going to end. We may take a 1 or 2 minute break, and at 8 o'clock, we're going to continue on with some coding. So just stay tuned if you'd like to do a little bit of coding. We're going to review some of the coding we did between October and September. Sorry, October and December. And then take a little preview at some of the other coding we'll be doing leading up to the end of February. So let's take about a 2 minute break and we'll resume. Thank you very much again to everyone.
William, just a quick question. Wanted to ask about the new Robo Rio 2 and the associated boxes. How important is that going to be moving forward for the current competition here and in the future? Should we be planning on looking at our
I'm really having trouble hearing.
I think, Peter, okay, Peter, you sent this question to me, I think. How important are the new Robo Rio 2.0 and associated boxes? I'm assuming you're referring to part of the main electrical, which would be the pneumatic hub, the electrical distribution panel, and the other Rev Robotics pieces that came new in the kit. Yeah. So I'd recommend using that as your primary electrical system, even if you're used to using the 2015 electronics. This is brand new, so it'll take quite a few firmware updates before it's fully ready. I'd recommend checking in weekly for those. But overall, the electrical system in the 2022 kit of parts is far easier to use and assemble as a student than the 2015 electrical system. Everything's a lot more clearly labeled, and the electrical distribution panel has switch lock devices as opposed to those ones where you have to shove the screwdriver in order to lock it properly. So that just makes it a whole lot easier to wire everything up. I would recommend setting that as sort of your standard electronics. As for whether the Robo Rio 2 is important or not, it is where all the code gets uploaded to. I don't know how much FRC experience you have, Peter, but that is kind of like the onboard navigational computer / controls hub. Everything passes through the Robo Rio, so you got to make sure that that's included. There are electrical schematics available online, as well as RI3D goes through it. On First Updates Now, they've actually got a video. It's about 8 minutes long that goes through it.
So thank you very much. We will make a switch over to our coding session. Thank you again to everyone.
William, I've just put in the chat here my email address. So if anyone has any further questions about FRC, I've got an FRC dedicated email because this is sort of what I do in my free time. So if anyone wants to ask a question to a fellow mentor, or if you're a student on a team who wants to get advice from a different team, feel free to email me at frcontario@gmail.com. It's just a personal account. It's just myself, Mr. Steele. I'm a teacher at Columbia International College, and I'm mentoring a couple of teams at the same time. And I'm also a part of the mobile alumni crew, which you might see later on this year. So yeah, I'm going to head out for the evening. Thank you, William, for inviting me on. It's been a blast.
Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you soon. All the best. And yeah, hope to see everyone in person soon enough. I'm looking forward to those days again.
Indeed. Take care.
So again, thank you very much for joining us this evening. The second part of our call this evening is now about computer coding. And we're kind of picking up where we were in December. We can just take a little review as to what we did leading up until our holidays. So our mentor session just finished.